সেটের মাইক্রোফোন আছে না, শব্দ শুনি না তো, হেডফোন উঠে থাকে।
Sir, you muted, sir.
Very good evening, Father.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, guest join matter, sir. Sir.
Okay, sir.
Very good evening, Professor, Father. You are mute, Father. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Very good evening. Very good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, Professor, Father.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, we are delighted to have you this evening here today, and we are eagerly waiting for listening to you how your teacher has to act as a leader.
Right. Thank you. So, should I go straight?
No,
right
no,
away?
2 minutes, Professor.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess you are going to control the slides.
You can. Okay. Do you want me to control the slide, ma'am?
Yes, because I don't have the hosting rights, so it may be difficult.
I will do.
Okay. Okay.
Present here. A very warm welcome you all for day 13 International Faculty Development Program on Teaching, Learning and Assessing in 2030. I feel privileged to have each and every one of you here joining us in this educational excellence organized by Department of Physics, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus. Today's guest is Father Raymond C. Tagore. He is currently lecturing graduate student in educational leadership at the Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, UNESCO Category 2 Center of Excellence at University of Cape Coast, Ghana. He is a Cambridge Commonwealth European International Scholar and hold MPhil and PhD degree in educational leadership and school improvement from the University of Cambridge, England. Father Raymond also hold a BA in theology from Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Kenya. and Bachelor in Philosophy from Guardian University, Italy. BSc Agriculture from University of Cape Coast, and Diploma in Tourism and Travel Agency Management from Cambridge Tutorial College, England. Father Raymond began his post-university profession as a banker, but later he turned to educational, where he worked in various capacities as a leader, teacher, and consultant in tertiary educational institutions across Africa. He is a founding member of Catholic University in Ghana. He is also a member of Commission for Proposed Loyola Just University in Nigeria, and member of Just Territory and Pre-Territory Education Commission for Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, etc. His major research interests are in leadership for learning, critical friendship, educational change implementation, and school improvement, and issue of access, equality, and quality of education. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much.
The session is yours, Father. You can proceed.
Thank you. So, Dr. Chair, let me just turn on the existing protocol to say hello to everyone who is joined to this webinar, to say good afternoon, Ghana. I am given the opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic, themed as teachers as leaders. I always believe that when we gather like this, it is for collaborative learning. That we'll be able to learn something from one another at the end of the day. So I'm grateful. Now, as it's clear on the slide, I am to share my thoughts on the topic teachers as leaders. And I would like to first of all take us through the outline, which is a blueprint of what I'm going to share with everyone. So we can move to the next slide. Yes, so I have quite a number of points I want.
Father, excuse me, Father.
Yes.
Yeah, you keep your mic near to your mouth, Father. Voice is very feeble.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, can you hear me clearly now?
No.
Still not clear? Okay, let me take up this. Hello?
No, sir, we not hear you.
No, Professor. No voice from your side. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you are very clear. You're very clear.
It's clear now.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so I was just taking us through the outline, which is a blueprint of what I intend to share with you. So by way of introduction, I want us to just look at the whole idea of what nations aspire, and to look at those aspirations against the realities on the ground. And then from there, we'll look at teacher leadership, teachers as leaders, and teacher leaders. That will lead us to the to the consideration of the developmental trajectory and conceptualization of the idea of teacher leadership. There we will ask ourselves, is it necessary? And I am saying yes, it is. It's a necessary evil. Teacher leadership, Teachers as leaders, teacher leaders are a necessary evil. And there we'll look at the uniqueness of teacher leadership. From there, we will jump to look at the paths toward teacher leadership. And then we'll look at teachers as leaders and the context in which they work. From there, we can then conclude with a kind of proposals I intend to offer, hoping that they can add to teachers' resolve to continue to do what they do best. So with this, we can go into the heart of the slides. So we can move to the next slide. Right. What I consider here as aspirations of nations is open to subtraction and addition. These are just few thoughts from where I sit. As far as I am concerned, looking at the 21st century in which we are, nations aspire to be thinking nations, to have citizens who are committed and are capable of becoming not just thinkers, but creative thinkers, lifelong learners, leaders of change, and contributors to sustainable prosperity. Nations aspire that their children, their citizenry, will become self-directed learners who are so confident that they become active contributors to the goals that their nations aim to achieve. Nations also aim to have citizenry who are able and are comfortable with cognitive demands, who are blessed with flexible and adaptive gifts, especially the command of print, visual and digital literacies to be able to face the complexities of the 21st century. These are some of the things I believe nations in the 21st century aspire to achieve so that they become competitive in this competitive world. Can we move to the next slide, please? But we know that aspirations are one thing and realities are another. Against these aspirations, nations work hard to ensure that these aspirations become realities. But literature, or you listen to thank you. We know that when we open our ears to what is around us, globally and locally, people still talk about inclusive and equitable quality education for children. We yearn for that. Different nations. We hear in the literature, we read in the literature, and we hear from the media. The lovers of education talk about global citizenship. And we ask ourselves, why would these still be issues for us? They are issues for us because the reality is that there is still inequality in nations across nations as far as achieving their aspirations are concerned. There is inequality, there's lack of inclusion. These are realities. People still continue to think locally, but we hope that we will train or educate nations where their citizenry will think globally, even if they act locally. So we have not yet achieved our aspirations as nations. And it doesn't end there. There is even a more worrying phenomenon. And that is the learning poverty crisis that research has clearly indicated. And I have just picked something here as evidence. Globally, we still talk about learning poverty crisis. What that means is that you take children at the age of 10, you give them appropriate text, and they are unable to read and comprehend the content. And these are the children who will move through the various tiers of education to tertiary education. How do they become critical thinkers, creative thinkers? When they are so poor in their foundation. And so the learning poverty crisis is an issue. And if you look at the table that we have projected, globally, 48% of children are learning poor, meaning they are still unable to read appropriate text page to their age, and unable to understand even the little they are able to read. That is globally 48%, almost 50%. And if we move down to the low income countries, 90% of children are currently suffering from learning poverty. Let's go down to South Asia. We are talking of 58% of the children suffering from learning poverty. So there are issues. We have our aspirations, all right, but we have a long way to go. The realities on the ground are massive, and we have to find a way around them to be able to achieve our aspirations as nations. So we can go to the next slide. Now, based on the preamble I gave above, and given where I stand, as I said, these educational aspirations and realities are big and they are complex. And if there is any individual or category of people who feel they can stand alone and achieve these aspirations, I think it is a big dream that is far from reality. No, that cannot be achieved through that kind of disposition, nor can it be achieved through top-down mandates and policies that government and sometimes international development partners force down the throats of practitioners. To be able to achieve these aspirations, every education stakeholder has to lead, must be a leader. Teachers, students, head teachers, and so forth are and must co-lead and co-learn if we are to achieve these aspirations. Anyway, as Macbeth and Dempster argued, no one can be quarantined from leadership in any way, and no one can be impervious to learning. Our very anthropological composition is such that we have no choice but to lead. We have no choice but to learn if we are to survive, if we are to achieve any form of goal, individually or collectively. So where I stand, I consider the educational realities, the realities nations face are so complex and so big that they can only be addressed when everyone is a leader, when everyone is a learner. Can we move to the next slide, please? And I'm talking about leadership here actually in a very simple terms as positive influence, where people are able to have the space. It doesn't matter who they are, for as long as they are stakeholders of education, they have that space to annex their talents, their experiences to influence the process. So that in the end, we are able to foster effective learning, create conducive environment for that learning, to address the learning poverty, to help children to have the necessary foundation blocks on which they build all the way up to the tertiary level. So we surely need ethical educators. We need educators who are competent. We need professionals who are competent. We need community builders to be able to transform the process, transform the realities into the aspirations that we want to achieve and turn these aspirations into realities. Can we please move to the next slide? So I just talked about the fact that everyone has to play a role. Everyone has to play a role. But today, my focus is on teacher leadership, or teachers as leaders, or leaders. And I have a number of reasons for saying that. For me, it is important to focus on teacher leadership or teachers as leaders because these people are close to the reality on the ground. They are not in the skies. They are right on the ground, facing the daily realities. As researchers, as scholars, as mentors, to be able to influence the educational processes, particularly teaching and learning, building relationships. And so it's important to focus on them. In fact, Harris and Widges, they even believe that classroom teachers should be the locus of school effective leadership. If leadership in educational context or institutions is to lead us to what we want to achieve, the influencing process is to lead us to achieving our aspirations, teachers should be at the center of it. And I share this feeling with them, this thinking with them. So these are two reasons why I want to just focus on the teachers for now. Can we move to the next slide where I have my third reason? And the third reason actually is a quote, and it's from Grenville and Bonwell. in 2012 when they said this, following their research. They simply try to expose in clearer terms who a teacher is and what a teacher does. And so they said, at their best, teachers act as role models.
நான் கிளாஸ் அட்டெண்ட் பண்றேன். நீ என்ன பண்ற? என்ன படிக்க போற?
At their best, teachers act as role models, inspiring children to a lifetime learning, encouraging the children to identify and develop their strengths, be it academic or vocational, building their confidence and self-assurance, enabling them to reach their full potential, or at least come close to achieving that potential. And at their worst, not only can these teachers turn children off learning for life, they can damage the children's self-worth, foster grown-ups and authority figures, and launch children on a downward path. And so whether we like it or not, teachers and school staff generally have an extraordinary influence on future generations. Given this, I think it is only logical to accept the fact that teachers are quite central and seeing them as leaders. Remember, I'm talking about leadership as simply an influencing process where through their lifestyle, through their competence, through their teaching, they are able to move learners, they're able to move colleagues to that level where we are able collectively to shift at least a step towards achieving our goals as nations. So it's important to focus on them. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, we do see these terms: teacher leadership, teacher leaders, teachers as leaders. I would like to crave your indulgence to use these terms interchangeably in the context of this presentation, because for me, they are simply comfortable bedfellows, where you take the idea of the teacher leadership, and we are basically talking about the influencing activity or space in which the teacher leader exercises the influencing, the positive influencing of processes, teaching and learning. And we know that from a contemporary point of view, the emphasis has been on both the activity, which is the leadership, and the person, the leader. They are equally important. Unlike those days, when is it possible to mute our Dr.
Dear participants, please mute your mic.
Thank you very much. So I am arguing that these terms, at least in the context of this presentation, should be used interchangeably because they are comfortable bedfellows where leadership as the influencing activity, the space, simply provide the forum within which the leader, the person, exercises the influencing process, the leadership process. So I want to use that interchangeably in this presentation. And I am saying that years ago, the emphasis was always on the leader, in which case the leader and leadership are coterminous. But we have gone past that stage. Leadership is more than the leader. If we stay at that level of considering leadership as leader, what happens when the leader goes? So we want to acknowledge the fact that the leader is important because they exercise the leadership. But leadership also has the right to be emphasized because it provides the space. It is the activity. And it should be such that everyone can have the opportunity to participate in. Okay, so let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So now that we have looked at this concept and we agree that we are going to look at them interchangeably, I would like to just pick the first one, teacher leadership, so that we look at the developmental trajectory of teacher leadership over the years. And Chen encourages us to always begin by thinking of teacher leadership, first of all, in the context of the role they play, the transformative roles that teachers play. It is within that context that we actually talk about teacher leadership or teachers as leaders. And in fact, come to think of it, this concept is not a new concept because as early as the 1940s, Ban had already envisioned the importance of teacher leadership and deliberately encouraged administrators, former leaders at the time, to dig into these abilities, creative powers of teachers and encourage them to contribute as leaders. And later on in the 80s, the idea intensified, especially in North America. And by the 1990s, the concept of teacher leadership took good shape and began to spread. So by 2000, it was as common in the UK and other parts of the world as it was in North America. So it's not a new concept, but it developed gradually, starting with a call from Ban, and gradually the concept took the shape it took. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, in this trajectory, developmental trajectory of teacher leadership, it just didn't drop like a bomb. It developed in different waves. And according to Silver, 3 waves stood out. The first one is the kind of teacher leadership that focuses on facilitating school systems. So it was in this context that teachers were beginning to be given formal roles as departmental heads and so forth. And the idea was to contribute to the effectiveness and the efficiency of the school or the educational system. But with time, there was this recognition that teacher from the very beginning is a teacher, an instructor, And if there's anything at all, the leadership role should be embedded in that. The teacher should not be taken out of that domain, that context. And as a result, the second wave came where the emphasis of teacher leadership was that of instructional leadership. So teacher leadership as instructional leadership, where the idea is no longer occupying formal positions per se, but where teachers play leadership role as team leaders, as contributors to curriculum development and professional development of their fellow teachers. And as a result, teachers were able to go as far as even sharing their instructional capacities to create opportunities for their own colleagues. So that was the second wave, moving away from the system being the focus to instructional leadership being the focus, to the third one, which is on the next slide. Yes. So the next, or the third wave, was now connected to teachers again exercising leadership in facilitating restructuring of schools. So in that case, teachers were invited into school management teams where they offered leadership ideas. Teachers were given room to share responsibility and develop the capacities of the schools, whether in terms of learning, teaching, and leadership, and to contribute to school-wide change efforts. And as leaders who lead their lives day by day, teachers became part of the very heart of the leadership activities. So as you can see the waves, starting by giving them room at the system level, then reminding us that no, you are leaders, but don't forget that you're teachers too. So let's feel the instructional capacities that you embody. They said, no, it's also more than that. We need you to lead or to contribute to restructuring of schools, whichever way you can contribute, at least to improving the school in various capacities. So that has been the different waves through which teacher leadership developed within the bigger trajectory. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, before I continue, I would like to know whether you actually can hear me clearly and you are able to follow. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
we are following you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, Father, you can proceed, Father.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now, do we really need teacher leadership? If we do, for what? Why is it necessary? For me, teacher leadership is a necessary evil. Some people may say it is not necessary, we don't need it. But where I stand and from research, teacher leadership is a necessary evil. And I will be coming to the reasons why I think so. First of all, let's just look at the dynamics of human civilization. From the very beginning, we understood, or teachers themselves would understand, that their sole duty was classroom teaching. They were always aware, and those who are teachers also saw them as such. And those were the days when we talk of the and everyone can just do the dirty jobs of maybe teaching and others, and one person has all the wisdom. We have gone past that stage. We now talk of distributed leadership, distributed power. The world in which we live, the school system has become much more complicated. Leadership has to be distributed. We needed distributed intelligence. Heads like the head teachers and so forth, to be able to improve schools, to be able to move schools towards country.
Dear participant, speaker call is disconnected. Please wait for a few minutes.
Yes, so I think we are back. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
The voice
So
is
I
breaking.
was making, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You please continue.
Okay. So I was making a case that gone were the days when leadership was identified with the leader. At that time, teachers were mere classroom teachers. Probably human reality, social, economic, political was a little bit easy to control, to manage. Today, we are in a very complicated civilization where an individual cannot have it all to manage the complexity of schools. Whether you look at it in terms of learning, in terms of teaching, in terms of relationships. So the idea of distributed leadership is the order of the day. And as a result, teachers who are so central to the school system can only also play their roles as as leaders. So teacher leadership is a necessary evil. Research has also shown that top-down leadership and government-led initiatives usually will yield inadequate results. We need bottom-up approaches, and the bottom-up approaches are those who are right there in the reality of teaching and learning. Teachers are part of that. So their leadership is a necessary evil. Again, even if we look at it historically, we know that from the beginning, teachers saw themselves simply as classroom teachers, but that has morphed. It has changed over the years into seeing the teacher in three categories: the sage teacher, the professional teacher, and the liberal teacher. Teachers remain as sages because they are honored and they are respected for the role they play as mentors and imparters of knowledge. Can we move to the next slide, please? But not only that, teachers are also seen as professionals. Of course, some people will still say the teaching profession is not professional, but people are free to own their opinions. But the reality is that teachers are also professionals, which means they have responsibility, or they deserve the responsibility and autonomy, okay, to contribute to curriculum development, instruction, decision-making, as we had seen earlier. They can no longer just be mere implementers of what is poured down onto their throats from the above. They have to be key to the development of all those ideas from the very beginning. So teachers are also professionals. And they are also laborers. Think of laborers in other domains of human professions. One key thing or two key things usually about such practitioners or laborers is that whatever job they are given, the job has to be clearly described and their duties listed in contracts. And if you are getting them to do anything outside that, then it has to be negotiated. Teachers are also laborers. That's where they are. So their leadership activities, it's not that simple. They play the leadership role as sages, as professionals, but also in the sense of laborers in the educational context. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, Baba and Moshed in 2007, they conducted this big study, and the study was focused on educational systems in the world that work and can serve as role models for the rest of the nations. And they discovered from their study that those systems are working because teachers have an enviable place. Those systems accept the fact that the quality of the educational systems cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. So the teachers in such context have every opportunity to grow and to impact, to lead and be creative. And so seeing teachers as such, again, shows that they are so important in the educational systems as inculcators of knowledge, as role models, bridge builders, as people who impart moral values for learners, for students. So their leadership is a necessary evil. And not only that, it is also a necessary evil even for their own growth. It is also necessary for the growth of their own colleagues, for teacher autonomy and self-direction. So teacher leadership is a necessary evil if we are to be able to maneuver our way through the complicated realities in the educational domains towards achieving the aspirations we want. Can we move to the next slide, please? We are told also by some researchers that when teachers assume new roles, not just as mere teachers, but as leaders, the contribution they are able to make in terms of expanding the visions of schools and pushing schools and educational systems towards achieving those visions is massive. As a result, they are a necessary evil and they should lead. Research also has summarized, especially quite recently by Lee and Liu, that as far as teachers are able to lead, you can see the impact at teacher level in terms of teacher efficacy, at school level in terms of school improvement, instructional leadership, pedagogical improvement, and student improvement. So their leadership is a necessary evil. Please, we move to the next slide. So far, I never really offered any definition of teacher leadership. But now is the time at least to say, what do we really mean by teacher leadership? There are several ways we can conceptualize this idea. But I found these two definitions by Nguyen and others, and also York and Duke, very, very rich. So I am picking just one because the two actually align in terms of the content they provide. For York and others, we talk of leadership, teacher leadership also as a process by teachers. And they carry on this process as individuals or collectively. And the idea usually is to positively influence their colleagues, school communities, teachers, head teachers, students learning with one goal: to ensure effective learning of students. So that is what teacher leadership is. Their job is basically to influence the process, which will have benefit. And the process here is about teaching, it's about learning, it's about relationships. And the sole goal is to influence or lead to the improvement of students to start with, fellow teachers, head teachers, and even beyond the school, to include community, to include parents. So that's what we mean by teacher leadership. Can we move to the next slide? And for me, this is extremely important where we are now, because when we talk of teacher leadership and we are talking about their influence, some people will be quick to limit in schools, maybe as departmental heads and so forth. Of course, we had looked at earlier. It's part of it. And that mode is the formal one, where we talk of formal teacher leadership. So their role there, what they do is role-based, and it's manifested through formal leadership roles and tasks. Their influence is legitimate. They have control. For example, if you're a departmental head, a teacher is appointed as a departmental head, it is a legitimate role, formal. We have to respect what they say, because their focus is just like that of the layer above them. They work to contribute to the managerial and the administrative aspects. So that is fine. But teacher leadership, their influence is more than that. More even importantly is their leadership as informal, or what nowadays we call non-positional teacher leadership. This one has nothing really to do with the fact that one is appointed formally to occupy a position. No, it is basically about the day-to-day informal roles teachers play to encourage others. They don't wield any power in that sense, but they are very lifestyle. For example, their expertise, their social capital, the manner in which they teach, they encourage children, the manner in which they are simply role models without occupying any position. That, in fact, is one of the key areas teachers influence the process. And we refer to that one as non-positional teacher leadership. So that is the other model. So we talk of teacher leadership, bearing in mind these two domains of their influencing role. Please, we move to the next slide. But quite recently, Hanzika, in a piece of research also came up with a middle ground, say, yeah, but teachers are not necessarily exclusively formal or informal. There are teachers who hold on to both, where they play both formal and informal roles. So such teacher leadership should be described as hybrid teacher leadership, where their approach is eclectic, drawing from both ends of the pendulum to ensure that teaching and learning are effective, relationships grow, conditions are provided, conducive for everyone to feel belong. We know that one immediate challenge with this is divided energy. It is not always easy to keep a balance on two extreme weights on a pendulum. But the reality is that this is another way teachers lead. Can we move to the next slide, please? So teacher leadership, therefore, or teachers as leaders, therefore, are actually unique. They are unique. Please, you've jumped the slides. Hello?
This is the slide, sir.
All right. Yes, we can move to the next slide. Thank you very much. Yeah, we stay here. So the point I was making is that teachers are unique. Their leadership is unique. As leaders, they are unique. And the reason is that their leadership, as I said at the very beginning, is very much connected to the example they have shown through years of experience, years of excellence, especially as non-positional leaders. And as a result, it is uniquely rooted in the quality of classroom practice. It is uniquely founded on the teachers learning in practice. They are learning on the job, which made them stand out to be given that opportunity or to embrace that opportunity to lead. Can we move to the next slide, please? The next slide, please. Can we move to the next slide? All right, thank you. Right, so teachers come to ascend to this new role as leaders simply through their experience, through their knowledge, through their vision, and through their love and respect for children. As people who have what it takes to create knowledge, to share virtue, and to envision for the common good of the system. So teachers move towards where they are because they bear these qualities. Can we move to the next slide, please? Wonderful. So in short, just looking at what we have seen so far, I think the book entitled Awakening the Sleeping Giant of a Teacher Leader by Katzanga and a colleague sort of summarizes who a teacher is and what teachers should be doing. Their message is that when we look at teachers who define the teaching profession, there is enormous yet untapped potential within. So there's no question there. We need to untap that potential if educational systems are to work towards achieving their aspirations. What we should be thinking about rather is the challenge as to how to realize the potential that teachers embody. The next slide, please. Right, so we have talked about the teachers and we have argued that they just have to lead. But as I said earlier, it's not that simple. We have different stakeholders of education among whom teachers will have to lead, including themselves. So there are big questions we have to answer, or at least teachers will have to respond to. So the first question is to teachers on this platform at the moment. Have teachers been able to shed off the old age idea that, oh, I am just a mere teacher syndrome? Teachers can be given the room to lead, but this syndrome can make it difficult for teachers to be authentic leaders. So the question is to all teachers on the platform at the moment. Do you see yourselves as teachers? Have you been able to shed off that syndrome that I'm just a teacher, I'm not a leader, let those who are leaders lead? Do you accept yourself as leaders? That is the question for teachers themselves before we can lead as teachers. But there's a question also for head teachers, for students who we now know as digital natives who are laden with unbridled rights, and for our usual encyclopedic politician education informants. The politicians, they know it all anyway, and parents and media. The last question is to all of us. Do we see teachers as leaders? Do we accept them to lead? Do we offer them the support they need to lead as sages, as professionals, with knowledge and autonomy to influence the system? These are the questions, in fact, we should all be pondering on as we share ideas about teacher leadership. Please, can we move to the next slide? In fact, the reality of the context in which teachers have to be leaders, have to lead, is a very, very complicated one. Kraft and Leon, this study was focused on the United States of American context. I think it is not that very different from other nations. They have looked at teacher professional prestige, interest, preparation, and their satisfaction in the teaching job for the past 50 years. And they have concluded, according to their findings, they have concluded that is a mixed bag as far as these realities are concerned in the context of teacher, the context in which teachers work. That, especially in the 70s, going to the 80s, these constructs or indicators of teacher profession took a nosedive. Then in the 80s, it rose. That we have mentioned are at their lowest level. That is the context in which teachers are supposed to lead, where their professional prestige, interest, preparation, and job satisfaction are on the downward path to their lowest level. So how do they lead successfully, authentically? It doesn't end there. Colin Walsh also captured the 21st century in the following words that every one of us, whether teachers or politicians, will have to lead. We are in a world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That is the context teachers have to lead. How easy is that? They experience burnout, especially with educational reforms that require that they are on their feet 24 hours a day, especially with COVID-19 that hit them hard in terms of their roles. They also have to lead in a time of acceleration, the speed of light, and that is informed by technology and globalization. And we are talking of acceleration where change is just so constant and fast. And people no longer believe in the idea of patience, resilience. No, answers have to be instant. I have brought my children to the school. Why have they not performed well? I brought them, it's your duty. You have to give them what they need to perform well. The teacher is in the middle of all of this. That's the context. A tough, complicated one for them to lead. Can we move to the next slide, please? And in fact, it doesn't end there. Think of human relationships, human values, and the conflicted interpretations and contestations of these. We are saying teachers are leaders, they should be creative, they should inculcate knowledge, skills in the children, make sure they are disciplined, they are well-formed, and at the same time, you have these conflicting interpretations of human relationships, where if teachers attempt as leaders to say, this is not the way to go, human rights lawyers and activists charge on them mercilessly. That is the context teachers lead. We know it, the unhealthy emphasis on human rights. But you are also thinking of a context in which cynicism about the honesty and integrity of contemporary leaders drives what happens. I mean, there's loss of trust in public leadership. So the teacher is not an exception. And it is not like those days when the teacher knows it all. Teachers are now considered as digital immigrants who are trying to lead digital natives in their own space. Power dynamics, how do they manage? That is the context teachers have to lead. So it's not an easy one. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Excuse me, Father.
Yes.
Yeah, I can go for another 5 to 8 minutes, Father.
Hello?
Can you have another 5 to 8 minutes, Father?
That's fine. That's
Ah,
fine. I'll be
thank
done within that period. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, bro.
Yes. So because of this context, there are so many issues of power, issues of promise and perplexities within which teachers will have to lead. They have to deal with the bureaucratic systems. They have to deal with issues of incentives. You've given them these roles. What are you giving to support them, to encourage them? These are some of the things teachers will have to deal with before they can lead properly. Can we move to the next slide, please? The next slide, yeah. Right. So we have looked at the challenges, but the fact that the context in which teachers have to lead is complicated does not mean that they can't still make a difference. They can. And so I have proposed 3 ways through which teachers can make a difference despite all these challenges. The first one, you have escaped it, is A, which is the intentionality of disposition. Can you go back to the other slide briefly? Intentionality of disposition. In this context, I am talking about teachers deliberately seeing themselves not as people who are co-opted into the business of leading. No, I want teachers to see themselves as part of the umbilical cord of the process, the mitochondria, the energy house of the system. Therefore, they have to see themselves as such and to remember that that which does not kill actually makes them stronger, and no one can take their psychological freedom to be, to learn, to know, and to lead if they want. That is the first thing I think teachers can embrace to make a difference. Intentionality of disposition. The second one, next slide. That's this intentionality of development. No one is going to develop us. No one is going to do things for us. Teachers have to learn to know and meet the signs of the time, especially in the 21st century, by intentionally developing their values, especially to learn their teaching or their pedagogy to be learner-centered, and to show a strong sense of their identity irrespective of what. Can you move to the next slide? Hello, the next slide. Right. To intentionally develop their knowledge in pedagogy and assessment. That is the only way their very lives can impress children, colleagues, and others, and give them the capacity, the power to influence. Can you move to the next slide? Yes. And that is the last proposal I am making for teachers to help them make a difference. Leave out the dispositions that I propose. Develop yourself as innovators. No one will do this for you. Once this is done, you have what it takes to be authentic leaders in the space of the educational system. The next slide. We're almost there. The next slide, because I've shared on this. The next slide. The next slide, if you can hear me, please. Yeah, because I have explained these ones. Right, good. And so the concluding remarks, a few of them I want to share. And the first is that, as far as I am concerned, and as other scholars have indicated through research evidence, teachers are leaders. Anthropologically and functionally, they are leaders. They lead themselves and they lead others. From classroom to the system level. They do so as positional and non-positional leaders, and as role models, innovators, advocates, motivators, and inspirers. But their work is in the context that is quite volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So they need help. The next slide. The next slide, and that should be it. So, as part of the concluding remarks, I want to thank Dr. N. Sukan and SRM Institute of Technology for this opportunity. May God bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, Father. We had a wonderful session, very good insight regarding the teacher as leaders. And you have given these three types of teachers, SAIC teachers, professional teachers, and laboratory teachers. And you very categorically differentiated the principles as the virtue of position or virtue of experience they're coming to the leadership level, whereas actual teacher leader rooted in the classrooms through teaching, research, and mentoring, dealing with the students. A wonderful differentiation you made it on that. And you know how this different accelerations and change work a world, the teacher position has to be developed over the period of time is beautifully explained in all the contests. Thank you for your valuable time shared with us, and a lot of quote you quote from the literatures also that. Thank you very much once again that. So participants, please, can you please switch on your videos to take some group photos, please. Thank you very much. Father?
Yes.
Please switch on the video to take photos, Father.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Take photos, ma'am. So, thank you. So now any questions to the father from the participants, please unmute yourself. You can ask, get it clarified. Any questions, please? Any questions, please?
Okay, sir. I thank all the participant and faculty for take your time and make today's session a successful one. Thank you all. Dear participant, feedback link is posted in chat box. Kindly share your valuable thoughts.